A very good evening, everyone. Welcome to Lecture 7 of Professor H.D. Sankalia monthly lecture series on Jain heritage. To deliver Lecture 7, we have with us Dr. Yashvender Dhaka, sir, who will be speaking on the topic Archaeology of the Jain Stupa at Mathura, Epigraphy, Engravers, and Issues of Patronage. Before we begin, I would like to tell all of you that because of the settings, you will not be able to mute your mic. You're only requested to type the questions towards the end of the session, and these questions will be taken up towards the end of the session only. Uh, I welcome you all on behalf of Bhagwan Sheetalnath Chair for Jain Archaeology, Department of Ancient Indian History, Culture and Archaeology, Deccan College Postgraduate and Research Institute, deemed to be University. For people who are joining in for the first time on this online platform of Professor H.D. Sankalia lecture series on Jain heritage, let me introduce you to this particular lecture series. Professor H.D. Sankalia, the founder of the Department of Archaeology at the esteemed Deccan College Postgraduate and Research Institute, deemed to be University Pune, is the person who is known for multiple excavations. He has contributed a lot to the field of archaeology, heritage, history, and overall to the field of social sciences. His contributions to the field are immense, but specifically his publishing of the inscription at Pale Cave, along with Dr. Shobna Gokhale ma'am, led to the attestation of the fact that the early presence of Jainism was very well there in the region of Maharashtra and Western Deccan. The inscription which they decoded was placed around 2nd century BCE to 1st century BCE. And based on that, he had also hypothesized that this cannot be the only inscription which proves us the existence of Jainism in the region of Western Deccan in these early centuries. To honor his legacy, we have named this particular lecture series after him. The Jain Chair at Deccan College is collaborating at multiple institutes and is bringing out multiple projects, multiple activities like the internship program, the bibliography project, monthly online lecture series, annual lectures, special lectures, and so many other things are undertaken by the chair. Without any further delay, I would like to invite Dhananjay Khandare, the research assistant of Bhagwan Sheetalnath Chair for Jain Archaeology, to give a brief introduction of our today's speaker, Dr. Yashvender Dhaka, sir.
Good evening, everyone. Dr. Yashvender Dhaka is working as assistant professor and teacher in charge, Department of History, Vardhaman College, Binjore, MJP Rohilkhand University, Bareilly, Uttar Pradesh. He did his post-graduation in ancient history, MPhil, and PhD in ancient history from Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. The title of his MPhil dissertation is Jainism in Mathura, a role of laity at Kankali, Tila, and he carried out doctoral research on the topic titled Mathura, Biography of Pilgrim Town. He is recipient of Dr. Pooja Bharti Memorial Prize and Dr. B.B. Chowdhury Prize for the paste paper presentations in the Indian Art History Congress and Indian History Congress respectively. His articles are published in the Proceedings of Indian History Congress and Indian Art History Congress. I welcome you, sir.
Namaste, everyone. Am I audible and the PPT is visible to everybody?
Yes, sir, you're audible and the PPT is also visible.
Okay. So, in this prestigious lecture series, which is very cordially I was invited to by my elder brother and dear friend, Professor Ganveer, I have delivered 2 lectures earlier, and I was about to deliver this lecture and I got really indisposed. So now we are completing the trilogy that I started. So in this lecture, in the previous 2 lectures, we have discussed the Jain Stupa at Mathura and laity in detail. Now in this third lecture, the 3 important aspects I would like to discuss with you all. First is the epigraphy, how the epigraphy changed the landscape of Mathura. Second, the least talked about issue of engravers, how engravers were dealing with multiple religions in the multi-religious site of Mathura. And then the issues of patronage, how patronage has been seen in the Indian subcontinent, our earlier scholars, and the recent trends. So we start with the slides. Now, these are the three sections I have divided into. First, we will discuss the epigraphy. Second, the engravers and the related issues. And the third is issues of patronage. So we start with the section 1. So first of all, we discuss epigraphy. As we have discussed earlier, the inscriptions found in Mathura with different religious affiliations, be it Jainism, be it Buddhism, Naga worship, Shaiva worship, Vishnu worship, the inscriptions are normally found on the base of the icon, apart from sometimes the upper part. As we have seen in the previous two lectures, the epigraphs are in running from right to left of the four side of the base of the icon in case of a Sarvato Bhadrika Pratima, which is a unique Pratima depicting four Jina Arhats in four directions. The icons can be dated safely on paleographic and iconographic basis from 2nd century BCE to 3rd century CE. So this is our time period of 500 years. Now, phonology of the language here is Sanskritic, but that morphology is Prakrit. So we in Mathura, we are moving in this time period of 500 years from a Prakrit dominated language to more of a Sanskritic language when we come to the early centuries of the Christian era. Now, the characteristics of the alphabets, and in the second part of the lecture, we'll go in detail in this. The alphabets are very squat and square letters, and they were made of a single stroke most of the time. So the hard single stroke on the material, which culminated into the written inscriptions. Now, there is a general pattern of change in the language that I discussed just now from Prakrit to Sanskrit. This we'll see in the period of 500 years from 2nd century BCE to 3rd century CE. So the language is changing. People are going more towards Sanskrit and leaving Prakrit. So after the Mauryan Empire, until the Gupta Empire, we are seeing the shift from Prakrit to Sanskrit in inscriptions. The Jain inscriptions show a development of Brahmi script from post-Mauryan to Kushana stage in my time period of study, and almost all of the inscriptions are in Kushana Brahmi, as we associate Brahmi with different dynasties in North India. So we have Kushana Brahmi, then after we have Gupta Brahmi, which is a little more difficult to read. Now, the very important aspect in chronology comes, the accession year of Kanishka is generally adopted at 78 CE. Now, in recent trends, we are seeing the debates of 150 and 160 CE also. And Professor Irfan Habib has written a lot on this through Chinese sources, but we'll go by the established evidence, and that would be 78 CE. Now, in this time period of study, the epigraphs that we are seeing are from Kushana year 5 to Kushana year 98. That means from 83 of the Christian era to 176th year of the Christian era. The latest inscription that we have found from Kankali Tila, that is from 1134 Vikram Samvat, as is written on the inscription, or 1067 CE. So we are seeing a continuation of tradition till the 11th century, not so much vigorously, but at least the tradition was continuing. Now coming to the next slide. The notion of time in the inscriptions are conveyed through our Panchanga, the traditional lunar plus solar calendar in a particular season. So the epigraphs would start with the year of Kanishka that has 14 inscription. Then Hovishka, we have 5 inscriptions, and Vasudeva, we have 1 inscription. They mention categorically the lunar calendar, the month, the tithi, everything is mentioned in detail, which we do not value much as we are now continuing with the Gregorian calendar. But if we see females in our own homes, most of our festivals are based on the lunar calendar. So this is very important, but generally historians and archaeologists do not pay much attention to it and do not try to glean the data from it. Now, we have one inscription from the reign of Kumar Gupta also, and the earlier one that we just discussed of Vikram Samvat also. So, the lunar calendar details, and then after the general formula in inscription starts with Siddham, and then if the inscription is particularly donated for a particular Tirthankar or Arhat, then it starts like Namo Vardhamanasya, if it is the case of Vardhaman Mahavir, or if it is donated in general, then the formula is Namo Arhantanam, which is the original word used for all the 24 Arhats in the Jainism. Excuse me. Later, this word Arhat is replaced by Tirthankar, and the Tirthankar word comes into provenance later on. But in my time period of study in Mathura, we see the word Arhat predominantly used across all the inscriptions. Now, first of all, when we are discussing epigraphy, the most important feature in Mathura, be it a localized cult, are Yaksha inscriptions and icons. So we have to pay attention to them, what they are saying. Yakshas were the local urban deities, unlike the predominant view of local rural deities. In my opinion, they were not rural deities at all because their patronage comes from the mercantile community. Now, they are associated with trees, waters, forests, fertility, and protection issues for which the merchants were going to them. Now, Yakshas were converted from these powerful standalone deities to terrifying, scary, subsidiary, and attendant deities in Jainism and Buddhism later on. So earlier, Yakshas were worshipped standalone. Later on, Jainism and Buddhism and then Hinduism also incorporated them and made them subservient to their chief deities. Now, the textual imagery in Jain, Buddhist, and Brahmanical literature shows Yaksha or their counterpart Yakshi as frightening, dangerous, which is and make them subservient to their main deities. This absorption process started after the 1st century BC with a fast pace, and when we reached to 4th century CE, this process was complete with total marginalization of these local but urban cults. Now, if we take an example, the Parkham Yaksha, the most famous Yaksha that was found in Mathura from a village named Parkham, this was donated by Gomitak, who was a disciple of Kunika, including 8 brothers of his who were members of Manibhadra Puga. Means they were worshipping Manibhadra Yaksha, who was donated by them by all 8 brothers. Now, the inscription further states that this icon represents Yakshamani Madra, as we discussed, who was a deity of mercantile community and was worshipped in trading centers. So this is very clear from the Epigraphia Indica that we are talking about merchants who are donating, and this is an urban landscape. It is not a rural landscape at all. Now, an icon of Kuber was also found from the same spot from where we have found Yaksha Manibhadra, with 2 other yakshas of taller height than Parkham Yaksha. So Parkham Yaksha is 8 feet tall, very tall icon, and is donated by these mercantile brothers. Now we come to the Chargaon Naga and Jamalpur Dadikaran Naga. As we see from our site, Mathura, that Yaksha Yakshi and Naga Nagi worship were important local cults. So we have 2 more, Chargaon Nag and Jamalpur Dadikaran Nag. So in Chargaon Nag, epigraph states that the icon was established near a water tank. As we have seen that water bodies are important part of religious structures, the water tank was established by Sena Hastin and Bhondak. It was donated in Kanishka year 40, which comes to 118 year of Christian era. Then we have the most famous Dadikaran Naga stone slab in the shrine of Dadikaran Naga, which was discovered and is taken from Epigraphia Indica, and it runs like this. So first I'll give you the transliteration, and then I'll give you the translation to give you an example of how the inscriptions were written in Mathura. And then when we will come to the second part, you will get to understand the better how the engravers and scribes and other people were associated with this religious donation activity in Mathura. So the transliteration goes like this. Bhagavato Nagendrasya Dadikaranasya Sthane Shilapatto Pratisthapito Mathuranam. So in first language, they are giving the name of the deity, and Shilapat is Sthapit, jo icon that is established, and the name of the city is Mathuranam. The second line runs of the inscription like this. Shailala Kanam Chandaka Bhratrika iti Vidyamananam Tesham Putrehi. So here the social affiliations are given. In the third line, Nandi Bal Pramukhehi Darkehi Mata Pitrunam Agra Pratyakshataye Bhavatu Sarvasvatwanam. Here in the third line, they are giving the social relationship in their family and giving the cause of donation. Now in the fourth one, and this is a standard line in all the inscriptions, after your personal details and why you are donating, then you write Hit Sukhartam Bhavatu, for all the beings also. So this is the standard donation line. The first one starts with the deity and why you are donating. The second one, who is the donor, what are his social and economic status, markers of identity. In the third line comes the familial relations, and the fourth one ends with Hit Sukhartam Bhavatu. So I have put this not in Sanskrit but in English, the transliteration, so that everybody can read it. Now we'll go to the translation. So in translation, it will be easy for everybody to read. Translation goes like this. This stone slab was set up at the place of Supreme Nagendra, the Dikarna, by the sons. Nandibala being the chief among them. The eldest one is Nandibala, of the renowned actors of Mathura. And this whole family is a group of actors. They were known in the region of Mathura as Chandaka brothers. And they have donated this inscription and this icon for the benefit of their parents. Now, in the last line, it, as the standard practice is, comes to may it be the welfare and happiness of all beings. So, in the end, they are wishing for the welfare and happiness of everybody who is residing in Mathura. So, this is the standard practice in the inscriptions. Now, coming to the these donations in Mathura, the earliest epigraphs were read by Ludus, and Ludus refers to the icons of Panchaviras installed by woman Tosha in the region of Kshatrapa king Shodash around 1st century BC at the site of Mora. This inscription has been recovered from a well, and the Panchaviras are very famous in Bhagavad cult in Vrashnis, in which Krishna and Balram and all the familial deities come. Then again, we have an epigraph which comes from a door jamb. It was a Torana and Vedika which were part of a Mahasthan of Vasudeva. So again, continuing from the earlier two lectures in which we saw Jainism and Buddhism, now we are seeing some donations related to Hinduism. The Vasudeva, it belonged to the reign of Kshatrapa king. So a Mahasthan and epigraph donated to. In the same way, the Vaishnava icons from Mathura increased from 1st century CE and continuously growing in the Gupta period. Now, here the icons have foam-armed Vishnu on Garuna, his Vahan in anthropomorphic Varaha form, Vishnu in Chaturvyu form, Narayan, Matrikas, Durga, Gajalakshmi. So, increasing influence of Vaishnavism you can see from 1st century to 5th century CE. Now, the yajna and sacrifice, which have very strong evidence from Mathura. So, Ludus and Vogel, who discussed the inscriptions from Mathura, they have found the Yupa sacrificing post as an evidence of Brahmanical sacrifice in Mathura. And this inscription has been found from Isapur. The pillars have been found with the girdle. The Sanskrit epigraph on the pillar suggests that this system was set up by a Brahmana, Dronala, who also performed a ritual sacrifice of 12 nights. So basically, this sacrifice happens in a Krishna Paksha, in which you perform the ritual for 12 nights, and then on 13th and 14th day, you prepare for the sacrifice, and on Amavasya, you do the sacrifice. So this type of upas clearly demonstrate the ritual sacrifice associated with Brahmanism, of which the archaeological evidence are not in a good number. So this is the single example from Mathura. But as we say in archaeology, that even if the evidence is less, it does not mean the activity was less. It is for us to find the evidence, and we have not been so lucky in the case of Brahmanical sacrifices. Now, coming to the Sonk, which is another site, was excavated by German Indological team led by Herbert Hartel from 1966 to 1974. Here we have two ancient apsidal temples. And in one temple, the main deity is a Matrika. And we have found a Matrika plaque also of red sandstone. And this temple had many Durga plaques. And Durga is worshipped as Mahishasur Mardani. As we have seen, it is continuing Now, the second temple that Hartel excavated had a pair of Naga and Nagin, which have been seated on thrones, surrounded by attendants and people with folded hands in respect of the relief carving. So, this second temple is much more elaborate than the first temple, and there have been sculptures, terracotta figurines, epigraphs, and a seven-hooded mutilated Naga icon found from this structure. So most probably this seven-headed mutilated Naga was the chief deity in the second temple. And the two temples found in Sok were related to two different religious strands. So here comes the multiplicity of sites and religious contestation and using the same site nearby for the different stands of religion. So it is very clear that the Naga, Nagin, and Yaksha Yakshi cults were very much urban and worshipped in Mathura, along with the main religions like Jainism, Buddhism, and Hinduism. Now, as we are coming to the end of the part one, observations on inscriptions. So there are a handful of early Sanskrit inscriptions belong to the 1st century BC. But the use of Sanskrit, the language of epigraphs, really took off in the 1st century CE during the type of Kshatrapas. The inscriptions of times of the Kshatrapa, Shodasha, and then after we see many Sanskrit inscriptions. Mathura seems to have been a very important epicenter of this. The language is changing from Mathura, as we know that Kushana's second capital was considered to be Mathura. And during the Kushana period, the use of Sanskrit gradually spread to Buddhist donative records as well. So now Buddhists are also writing in Sanskrit. So this way, the language change phenomena happened from 1st century to 4th, 5th century CE. Now we have another example of an epigraph found from a well in Arjunpur, which is donated by Brahika, who is native of Radha, points to the gift of icon of Chatur Varna Sangha. As we have seen in earlier lectures, Chatur Varna Sangha or Chaturvidha Sangha in Jainism means Shramana, Shramani, and Shravak and Shravika. So these four constitute the fourfold order of Jaina monastic community. And the journal terms in which the epigraphs are written are Gani, Ganin, Shraddhachar, and Vachak. They are, means the mendicants are addressed as Arya, venerable, but this term is not always written like in Sanskrit. Sometimes it is written like Aya, sometimes it is written like Arya. So there is multiplicity, and the standard one word is not written. There can be differentiation in spoken terms, and it also problematizes the issue of engravers, how much they were educated, what they were writing, who was giving them on perishable material to write, who was the authority. That we will discuss in the second part. Craftsmen and engravers of inscriptions would have operated on a cross-community basis. So here we see these engravers and craftsmen, they were adhering to all the religions and they were giving their services to Jainism also, to Buddhism also, to Naga Nagin images, Yakshas also. So there is a commonality of symbols also. It is very sustainable to argue that a single craftsman would have provided icons to different religious orientations in Mathura, which is very easy to see from the epigraphs. Now we come to the laity part in inscriptions, as we have to discuss this because this is now an established fact that in Jainism in Mathura, almost 72 to 73% donative activity was done by female laity. And on the contrary, in Buddhism, it was not so. So we have to discuss this. So these donations were made for the worship of arhats in specific cases, as we have seen in the Dadikarana Naga inscription also, and welfare and happiness of all beings as a general pattern. Now, male and female donors are described to in various professions, like male donors and relatives of female donors as Shreshti, ironmonger, jeweler, perfumer, ironsmith, sarthvaha, dancer, metalworkers, goldsmith, vanika, and ferryman. So all these classes belong to merchants. Strong mercantile base of Jainality is visible from this. And in Jain inscriptions specifically, the donors are referred to their familial relations, incorporating professional information about their relatives. This highlights the importance of social and economic markers of identity. So the profession is very important. And what is your relation with that particular male? That is also important. So social relations are very important for the female laity who is donating. Now, the collective donations, the strong familial reliance that is coming in the Jain inscriptions. So the gift giving cannot be seen as an individual choice. So it is rather a collective choice, and we'll discuss it in the third part, the collective patronage, how the historians have seen collective patronage in Indian subcontinent. And this is also a part of a family in which resource utilization came out as an individual donation. So whole of the family is donating, but the donation is on the name of a female laity. The donative activity was negotiated with familial ties, religious authority, professional artisans and craftsmen, as we can see how the economic process of icon donation was going on. So this whole system was a collective effort on social plane. An inscription mentioning donation of sculpted Torana by Bala Hastin, who was a Shishini. The gift has been made collectively with parents and in-laws. So this is an example. You are donating on your own name, but then you are incorporating your parents also and then your in-laws also. So that this is a very strong female laity part in Jainism, as we have seen from Mathura. Now we are coming to the second part. In second part, we will discuss the issues of engravers, in which the audience is also important. Who were the intended audience? Who were the scribes? Who were the engravers? So the issue of audience is a bit problematic because it is not directly written anywhere, and the icons were donated for religious purpose. So their presence could be felt by the audience. The audience, as we also go into any religious structure, we can see the icons there. But in case of inscriptions, the situation is not the same. So it might be very hard to see the inscription from a certain distance, and you have to keep a certain distance in religious structures. So running inscription on all four sides, that may not be visible at all to people. So it seems quite right to argue that the main objective of the writing on icons was to immortalize the act of donation on the part of individual laity along with his family. So it was just to immortalize the act of donation. It was not intended to be read because it's very small. Sometimes the icons are very small and the writing is very minuscule, and it is running on the all four side, so may not be able to read. Now, the next issue comes. Carving and engraving of the inscriptions point to the fact that there were separate specialist engravers, scribes, who perform the task for the laity. So there are engravers, then there are scribes, and for writing may not be a common trait also. It may not be, literacy may not be good at that point of time. So this whole process of icon donation shows a rich socio-economic transaction which involves religious people, social people, then economic sphere also. This defines the region of Mathura, and this also sort of creates a competition among the different strands of religious activity. So the contestation and competition comes out as a multi-religious site in Mathura. It may not be beyond historical reality also to think of professionals who were having more than one skill or all the skill to perform such a task. So we can think of a person who is engraver also, who is scribe also, who may be literate also. So therefore, the standard formula for writing may be on perishable material as advised by the mendicants. So it may be advised by the Gani and then copied by engravers. So these technologies would have operated on cross-community basis. The second point is, it is very sustainable to argue that a single craftsman would have provided icons to different religious orientations, as we have discussed earlier. And then interactions among the level of material culture are as likely to happen as at the level of social discourse. So it might be with the help of your preceptors, you donate, and then you interact with them, how to write, what not to write, what to incorporate, what not to incorporate, because the brevity of inscription forces you to write limited sentences. So it's very important what you have included, because we do not know what might have been excluded. So it is very pertinent to see as a student of epigraphy that whatever has been incorporated in an inscription is fundamentally very important for the donor, because there might have been other lines also which he or she wanted to incorporate but would not have done so, because there are limited number of sentences that you can write on an image. Now, in this very complicated second part, engravers, scribes, and scribblers are different from one another. As we can see, engravers are specialists, then scribes, and then scribblers, their attendants. It is a general understanding that those who engraved records were also the writers of epigraphs. It may not be so. So we have to be very, very cautious. Writer of any inscription may range from a religious preceptor to a proper person allotted for particular work. So there might be a senior person who is seeing this, might be a monk. There might be separate religious preceptors of various shakhas, as we have seen in earlier lectures in the case of Mathura Jainism, that we have Koti Gana, then there are different ganas. So in a particular gana, there may be a person who is looking after all these inscriptions, or there may be a one person who is looking after all the inscriptions donated in Jainism. So a scribe may take it down on any perishable material and then passes on to engraver. So scribe is a different person, then engraver who does the final act of engraving is a different person. Then an engraver who does the final act of immortalizing the donation, only the fact access to writing did not ensure their improved social status. So engraver may not be of a very high social status, but his job, his work to do was to engrave on the non-perishable material. Epigraphs were not written for reading purpose, but to immortalize the act of donation, as we have discussed earlier. So it had a psychological religious value for the donor. As we have seen, there are many plaques if we go to a religious structure and we don't even see or we don't even read them out, like who donated, why, and to whom. So we just see the religious structure. So it is very individual and personal psychological religious value. Now, the categories which are written and which we have seen from Mathura are Ayaskara, the one who is providing Ayas, may be iron, the Pitalahara, the Lohakara, so the engravers and scribes who are working in iron, who are working in metals, Sutradhara, one who might be writing, Shilpin, who is doing the engraving, and Shilakuta. Shilakuta, the one who may be providing the shilas which are coming to Mathura in Mathura School of Art. Now, the craftsmen specializing in graphic activities organize themselves into shrenis, as we have seen in various shrenis in epigraphs, and were very powerful group of people who were involved in professional writing. For example, the engravers of South Indian temples, now I have taken an example from South India, were professionals who specialized in engraving donative records. So this is generalizing what was happening in Mathura. The same thing is happening in temples of South India, and we'll see another site in which the same activities were happening as were happening in Mathura. Now, urban character of Mathura is very clear from the donations as well as laity. So it might also mean that there was literacy, writing, and that's how we see donative inscriptions. So this literacy in urban Mathura increased transport and communication, which would have ultimately helped in trading activities. Now, one such example of new profession for the old order comes from an epigraph from where Moola Vasu, a Brahman, donated a stone slab who claims himself to be the treasurer of Swami Shodasha, Mahashatrapa or Mathura. The Kshatrapas were ruling Mathura from in 1st and 2nd century CE. So this person happens to be the treasurer of Shodash, Mahashatrapa of Mathura, who is also a donor of an epigraph. Now, this Shodasha was the ruler of Kshatrapa period in the region, as I have discussed. Now, donors negotiated with the religious authority, preceptor, monk, or maybe nun in some cases, in the case of female laity in Mathura, to get the sanction for recording the act of donation. So, on perishable material, a religious authority might have checked what you are going to write on an epigraph. The multitude of epigraphs suggests that there was a specialized category of people who did the work of engraving, as we have seen, the Shilakarita. The inscription from Mathura dated to 171-172 CE records the gift of an icon of the Buddha by Kayastha Shramana. So again, I'm trying to take an example from Buddhism also, in which a Kayastha Shramana is donating an inscription to the Buddhist structure in Mathura. In the post-modern period, where the traders, travelers, pilgrims, preachers, and a range of local communities which bound the entire subcontinent into a web of relationship. So this also helped in Mathura School of Art and in donative activities, and in which these engravers and scribes and artisans were working, and which was a fruitful economic activity on their part. Now, the example that I was talking earlier, this comes from a South Indian site. This is also associated with Jainism in Andhra Pradesh. This is Vaddamanu, which has been excavated and in 80s, and large number of epigraphs have been unearthed ranging from the period 200 BC to 200 CE. So almost very similar period to Mathura. So these inscriptions have been found on the pottery, and Jain terminology of Gana, Kul, Shakha have been found written, which attests to the terminology present in the textual tradition, like in Acharanga Sutra and Kalpa Sutra. And we have seen in the earlier two lectures, the epigraphs of Mathura, the 103 epigraphs that we discussed earlier. We see the similar tradition coming from Gana, Kul, Shaka, which is available from Vadmanu also, which is available if you go to Tamil Nadu also, Karnataka, which is available from Mathura also, and later on we find the same in the text also in Acharanga Sutra. So the donative inscriptions of Jainas are sufficient proof of the association with Jainism and thriving state of the religion in the South India, apart from the region of Mathura. So it is not so that the mercantile community is supporting Jainism in Mathura only. This is the basis of Jainism. So everywhere you will find the same mercantile community, very rich laity who is supporting monks and nuns, and then it creates a juxtaposition in Jainism, a sort of oxymoron that mendicants who are doing extreme austerities and the laity who is extremely rich materially. So this is um, uh, a juxtaposition, a sort of oxymoron in Jainism studies that we discuss with our friends, that laity in Jainism is on the one side of the river and the mendicants and monks and nuns are on the other side of the river. Now, this motive of gift giving is always to promote one's own welfare as near kinsmen also. So this type of inscriptional reading may result out of repetitive trend of formulae used in the epigraphs. So once you have established a set of rules, this is continuously followed by other people also. So those who want to dominate, those who want to donate, they are always referring to the earlier one epigraphs who were donated, and they are using the same language, the same epigraphs, the same sentences were used. It may not be the case, as the issue of literacy in ancient India is a limited one. So that's why maybe the repetitive patterns in epigraphs are seen. And these formulae were prescribed by the religious preceptors, and individual donors might not be at the liberty of changing the matter. So there is another angle to this, that this is a religious donation. So whatever is suggested by the religious authority, that would have the final verdict. Now we are coming to the part 3. We have to discuss in great detail, and I think I'm short of time here. So now we are discussing the issue of patronage. Um, can we take 5 or 10 minutes extra in this lecture?
Sir, you can take as much time as you want. This is a special
Okay,
lecture,
so-
not of the certificate course.
Okay. So because this is a very important issue, and now we'll discuss the patronage. So basically, religious structures are ritual instruments, and their function is to web individuals and communities into a complicated and inconsistent social fabric through time, which we are trying to read through whatever evidence is available to us. Now, we must not take building of religious importance as patronized by the kings, if not specified as such. So most of the donations in this time period, from 3rd century BCE to 3rd century CE, most of them are community donorship. They are not coming like the Mauryas. So these communities as ritual instruments, their use changes. So one function of which is to web individuals and communities into a complicated and inconsistent social fabric through time. So these communities, they keep on evolving, they keep on changing also. And it is not a royal decree or a king's order through which you will see a continuous systematic development. There are overlaps, there are inconsistencies also in these donations, in these patronages, which we'll discuss now. So how these communities are donating, they're making use of them in a reciprocal relationship. So there is no historical agenda of conservation. This is a religious donation, and they want to self-preserve their memory, their identity with the religious structure. That's why any religious structure is not one structure, or not of one period also, and not of even one community also. So that religious structure moves through time, collecting social lightening and resources, and it may be repositioned also. Sometimes one religion goes up, then the second one goes up. So there is a contestation in a multi-religious site like Mathura. Now, in patronage, first we need to understand how our seniors, our earlier historians have seen the issue of patronage. in which two names come. One is Romila Thapar, who has discussed patronage in a great detail with literary sources. Then again, second one is Vidya Deheja, who has done a great work with Buddhism. So these two scholars have discussed this patronage as collective patronage, which puts emphasis on the laity and influence of the religious idea on lay people. So how lay people are seeing the religion, following the religion, how they are doing ritual worship, how they are involved with the religious structure. So in this, the Hegel is of the view that the term means construction of monuments and buildings through patronage of a community. So each donor adds up to the monument, and the architectural form of the building grows and completes its shape. So it's layered history, layered religious history, and the religious structure grows in time. So it is not like one monarch has said, like Ashoka, that you have to build this, and then he provides all the resources and it is built in one go. It is not so. And we have seen in the case of Sachi also, it is donated over a period of time, and then through those donations, the structure evolved over 2-3 centuries. So these all types of donation, combined, group, or single donations, these all come under the umbrella term of collective patronage in historiography. Now, this historiography is evolved by Vidya Deheja, who says that the religious structure of early centuries of the Common Era were not constructed by the kings or a particular dynasty, but through the efforts of the people in religious realm. It suggests a community sense that was working as an organic whole for the development of collective patronage. So on most of the sites, this is true that collective patronage was working in this case. But if we see a multi-religious site like Mathura, it may not be so. So every site within a region had its own trajectory with special regional inputs. Like we have seen in Mathura Jainism, we have Ayavati, the Yakshi, we have Nemoso, the goat-headed deity, and then we have Saraswati worship also in Mathura Jainism. So here in Mathura, these sites like Sonk, Mat, and Kankali Tila are the few examples within the region of Mathura itself which provided astonishing regional inputs about the issues of patronage. So moving further with the argument of Deheja, the patronage may not be always collective. It may have different strands within a multi-religious site. Even the patronage of Buddhism and Jainism are totally different. In Mathura itself, laity is the predominant part in donative process, especially female laity in Jainism, while monks and nuns themselves were donating more than half of the donation in Mathura for Buddhist sites. So if we see Buddhist sites, almost 60 to 62% donation is coming in Buddhism through monks and nuns themselves. And if we see female laity in Jainism, almost 72 to 74% donation is coming through female laity in Jainism. So within Mathura also, there are different strands in Jainism and Buddhism. So collective patronage may not be as collective as it seems in a single religious site. In multi-religious site, it may be very, very different. So it is a general term, but in multi-religious sites, it does not sustain as Vidya Deheja wanted it to sustain. Now, we have to see the colonial historiography also in patronage. So it initiated the study of ancient religions, the original scripts also. So we know the names James Prinsep, Cunningham, Holtz, Burgess. They addressed the issue of patronage in ancient Indian religious traditions. The emphasis was on the Buddhist side, as we have seen, and the trail of which left by the Chinese pilgrim Xuanzang in his book Siyu Qi, The Records of the Western World. And epigraphs were the biggest source for the study of this patronage. So this patronage, when it started, gave so much importance to Buddhism that they considered Jainism also as a part of Buddhism or a poor sister of Buddhism. So there was not so much focus on differentiating between these two religions. They thought that they are almost similar and they are just opposing the Vedic traditions. Now comes the Marxist historiography in patronage. So first work is of D.D. Kosambi. In his introduction to the study of Indian history, he discussed the patronage with respect to Buddhist sites in the Deccan, which you may all be very aware of. So he put forth the argument that the royal support was not very significant, except in the cases of the Kushanas, which we have seen in Afghanistan and northwestern part of Indian subcontinent. The epigraphs of the donors of various social groups could be found near to one another. So there are different social groups, and they are also competing among themselves who is a bigger donor. So the people who were donating had mercantile base, and they were contesting within the social groups also, that who is a bigger donor, which group is a bigger donor. We have seen this in Kosambi's work, which is very, very important. Now, again, his monumental work points out that this process of patronage could have been possible only in an open urban economy. So he's suggesting that Indian economy was not a village economy, as the argument at that point of time was. So it is not a closed village economy. It was very much so an urban open economy. Donations on such a large scale were possible because of the commodity production and exchange that created huge wealth. So we know Kosambi's Marxist lineage, but still his work is very important because he has an Indic perspective. Then this surplus was directed towards monastic organizations to sustain them and earn merit out of the donative act, which is very true. In Indian subcontinent, a donation, as we have seen from the Rig Veda, the Dan and Dakshina, is continuing till date. Now, the changes in terminology, which is very important. So the simple words which were used in earlier inscriptions like Danam, these changes to very important complex words, Deya Dhamma, which we have seen from Sachi inscriptions also. We need to examine these issues in greater details so as to nuance our understanding of collective patronage as a term. So how this use of the word is changing, like in earlier inscriptions, you find the meritorious gift described as simply Danam. Then it becomes Deya Dhamma. That is your duty, your moral obligation to give. So how these things change, we need to see in greater details. Now, we have seen the work of Kumkum Rai and Upinder Singh also in donative epigraphs of Sachi. So Kumkum Rai provides interesting details. She has done a statistical survey also, and I was very fortunate to study under her. So she was my teacher also in JNU. So she discusses all these things in great detail, which I have picked up from her, like professional work, native place, kinship ties, who are the donors, especially the female donors, as she is a very gendered historian. The statistical analysis she provides help us understand the process of donation. And then this same site is again taken up by Upinder Singh, and she explores the development of the site for donative process and discusses valuable social patterns in donative activity, which are very local. Like she has work on yakshas in Mathura. So if we see all the images that we have from Mathura, there are almost 159 as I could count. These are of Kushana period. So there are 26 which are very fragmentary. We cannot deduce any religious affiliation from them. Now remains 133. So at least 85 are Jain. I'm talking about images only, not of epigraphs. So sometimes there is no epigraph on an image. So we have to identify through iconography. record the erection of Jaina images, 4 are connected with the Naga cults, and 1 records the establishment of an image of Kartikeya, which is of Gupta period. Now, only 43 out of 133, it means almost like 1/3 are Buddhist. So Buddhism was not as has been discussed in Mathura. So if you judge the Kushana inscriptions, Buddhism itself was a minority movement there, and Jainism was the predominant movement. So we need to see these things in a proper light, proper manner, and we should not go blind by the colonial historiography also, like Buddhism was flourishing everywhere. Now, the Buddhist inscription from Mathura on the icons indicate about Sakya Muni, the Buddha and Bodhisattva, and Buddha and Bodhisattva were used interchangeably in Mathura. So either the people did not distinguish between them, they were the same, or they did not know. The people who were writing the epigraphs were not in the knowledge of differentiation between Buddha and Bodhisattvas. So Mahopadesakas, Samitiyas, and Mahasangikas were the schools which have been found from these inscriptions in Mathura Buddhist epigraphs. Mathura Buddhism also provided clear evidence of donation from monks and nuns, as we have discussed earlier. So they donated icons, in contrast to Mathura Jainism, where laity was donating the icons, especially the female donors. We have discussed this issue earlier also in Engravers and scribes. Now, as far as the intended readership of the donated record to be judged or seen, we must understand the placement of the record first. Where is this image is situated? So if we see this placement value, most of the records were never intended to be seen, because these were either in the dark or too much height was a factor. So illegibility was to human eye. These records were intended for the very act of donation and merit, whether spiritual or religious, coming out of it. So basically, it was for the religious and psychological benefit. And it is very safe to argue that the public display was not at all the resultant outcome of the act of donation. Their objective and role should be gleaned out from the material context in which they were produced and found. So this is more important than the reading part of the inscriptions. Continuous building and donative activities took place over a long period of time, as we have seen through 5-6 centuries. Then there is renovation and reconstruction also, because in Mathura Jainism, most of the earlier donated ayakpatas were again reworked and donated. Now, epigraphs, archaeological and sculptural material went through change over a period of time with the help of interaction and exchange of devotees and supporters. And this repeated reconstruction in a multi-religious site can be termed as changing cultural symbol for particular religious beliefs. So there are changing cultural symbols within Jainism also in Mathura, within Buddhism also, within Naga, Nagin worship, Yaksha, Yakshi worship, within Hinduism, within Bhagavatism also. So there are changing cultural symbols. After 2-3 centuries, you find the deities replaced, you find the symbols are replaced. Like in Jainism, in Mathura Jainism, the earlier used terminology for mendicants was Gani. Now, if you see in 9th-10th century, it changes to Suri. So Acharya and Suri was used later on. Earlier, Ganin was used. In the same way, the earlier inscriptions say Arhat Vardhaman, the later inscriptions say Tirthankar Vardhaman. So there are changes, if we can notice. The process of gift giving by royal houses is less visible than the laity in Mathura. Epigraphs do not tell us about the will of the kings, but these records donative gifts of the people, as we are seeing in collective patronage. And we may see the ancient Indian religious landscape as characterized by a cluster of distinctive sects and cults, observing common civilizational symbols like Dharma Chakra. So Dharma Chakra you will find in Jain inscriptions also, in Buddhist inscriptions also, in Hindu inscriptions also in Mathura, in Gupta age. You will find Dharma Chakra. So there is a commonality of symbols. Now, there is a great connection between water bodies and religious sites in Mathura, because Mathura is an arid region. An epigraph from the site of Mora records the installation of icon of 5 supreme Vishnu heroes, the Panchviras, in a stone temple, along with the donation of this reservoir. And then again, a donation of tanks and wells is found in all religious beliefs in Mathura. Like, for an example, an epigraph found at Jamalpur declares the donation of a Pushkarani, that is a water tank, along with a reservoir, Aramo, that is a grove, Stambho, pillar, and Shila Pato, the stone slab. This is the gift of treasurer of Swami Shodasha, a Mahashatrapa, that we have earlier discussed. Now, another important water body donation comes from a Shaiva temple, where Kheda of Mrag Kujita made a gift of a tank called Kalpa, a garden, a hall, a stone slabs, and shrines. So there are multiple donations along with the water body. The term Patitha, Pita, and Pratisthapita was used for icon installation in Mathura. So whenever you are using and you are donating an icon or establishing an icon, you use Pratisthapita as in Sanskrit and Patithapita as in Prakrit. So the religious and social identities of donors and their family relatives are clearly distinguishable from the inscriptions. The religious identity of the laity has been indicated as Shravak and Shravika and Shishini, those who are donating in Mathura Jainism. Females are the dominant part of the donors who are helpful in channelizing the resources with the help of their familial ties, which were incorporated in epigraphs into the religious sphere. So this is the trajectory of Mathura Jainism. Now, the male donors, all, as we have discussed earlier also, their titles are discussed. So this is a mercantile base of Jain laity in Mathura. And the Jain inscriptions, donors are referred to with their family relations along with professional information. This highlights the social markers of identity. A strong familial reliance, as we have seen, and it was a collective patronage on the part of the family. And then whole collective effort on the social plane, as an inscription mentioning donation of a sculpture Torana by Bala Hastini, who was a Shishini. Again, the gift was made collectively with parents and in-laws. So basically, the patronage is a socio-religious activity which is rooted in time, and it became like a movement on a collective level. If we see in Mathura, the religious structure becomes a living tradition and contribution of one another. The picture becomes complete when we see the donative patterns within a site. So within a site, there are different strands also. The continuous process of construction, repair, expansion, donation, icon installation, and worship patterns all add up to the patronage with the help of laity, having a continuous relationship with the monastic order. So this is a growing and continuous relationship. Then each donative architectural context. Then what also exists in historical studies is the tendency to emphasize individual identity over community. So sometimes we focus on individual donations, or we give example of individual donations, but it is the community which is much more important. While the inscriptions provide details of the identity of those who made the gifts, their primary function was to record contributions made towards the elaboration of a monastic complex. So the religious structure is more important. And the negotiation of status, identity, and agency, far from being an individual project, is within the larger network of collective patronage and operates on that meta level. These categories come out in epigraphical analysis as an icon, size, location of inscription, provenance, time, donor, season, purpose, social identity, preceptor, preceptor's identity, Gana, Sambhoga, Kul, Shakha, as we have seen in Jain inscriptions. Now, there are some suggestions for the future studies, if as we are all trying to do. So there must not be a deconstructionist agenda for creating theories of religion, as we have seen in some of the Western scholars. They try to do a deconstruction. And the research can be woven around the past scholarship, moving in a forward direction. So we must not reject our past historians. We should give them value and their research. The constructionist methods are necessary for a sound critical framework of religious studies. So if you are doing any religious study like in archaeology or epigraphy, there should be constructionist method, and you should build up on the back of your predecessors. Past models of study should be respected, as I have said earlier, and must not be discarded for the sake of new research approaches. An extension of scholarship can be easily based on the past work done with a systematic positive move towards the more complex phenomena of the questions asked. So we must ask questions and we need to change the questions also, but we must respect whatever our predecessors has done. And in this context, I would like to thank Deccan College to give me this opportunity again to discuss my point of view and how the religious historiography should grow and the issues associated with my humble study. And I thank you all, and I would like to have some questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for this wonderful and enlightening lecture. In fact, a thought-provoking lecture, making us think on how researches should be done and what should be added more to add more value to our present-day research perspective. Your talk also incorporated a lot of multidimensional nature of the stupa at Mathura's Kankali Tila, and also talked about the religious coexistence of the mainstream and folk cultures as well. There are some questions. I will read the question, and I request you, sir, to also switch on your video if it is possible.
Okay.
The first question is, what does the evidence from Mathura reveal about the intersection of religious identity and economic status in the formulation of patronage networks for Jain establishments?
Well, I think the video might not be possible as there is an electricity problem also at my location. So basically, the mercantile section of laity is quite visible from the epigraphs, but they, I think more studies are required in religious planes, especially if you see a multi-religious site like Mathura, and if you compare it with a multi-religious site like Girnar in Gujarat, or a multi-religious site from Maharashtra, or maybe from Andhra Pradesh, this will give a different perspective. So what I have done in my studies is I have seen the mercantile base of laity in Jainism from a particular religious site. But then if a particular student or a future research scholar sees multiple religious sites, like 2-3 multi-religious sites, and then see their donative patterns, their mercantile laity, what were the main reasons. Even in Jainism also, you can take 3-4 multi-religious sites, and if you see them, then it will give further way to Jain studies, and this would be a greater study in a future perspective if one can take up this kind of study.
Yes, definitely, sir. Thank you. The next question is, can you please refer some books on the topic that you dealt with today?
Yes, absolutely. The fundamental book that you should read if you want to study Mathura specifically, that is you should read Doris Meth Srinivasan. She had magnum opus on Mathura. She did an international conference on Mathura of 3 days, and this is Cultural Heritage of Mathura by Doris Meth Srinivasan. Wonderful book, extremely good articles. Even if you do a study on geography, even if you do a study on archaeology, and then again Suvira Jaiswal is very good. And if you want to read specifically Jainism, then Professor John E. Court is a great scholar. I had the fortune of meeting him in JNU, and he lives like a Jain monk. So these are some of very good scholars which you can read. Apart from this, if anybody needs any reading material or say bibliography or references, you are more than welcome. You have my email address. Please write to me. I'll help you as much as I can.
We will just take one more question now because we are falling short of time. The last question which I want to ask you on behalf of the participants is that, sir, what is the relevance of the local cults of their coexistence with the mainstream religions with the case study at Mathura?
The relevance of local cults has been emphasized by Upinder Singh in her article where she discusses the Yaksha cult in Mathura. One can do a wonderful study on Naga cult also in Mathura. And what happens is sometimes we see that Indian subcontinent has incorporated only one major religion like Hinduism, and then there are sub branches of that like Bhagavatism. Then you have other Shaivism and Shaktism, and then you have Jainism and Buddhism. But there are so many local cults which are not established form of religion, but they are worshipped in different cultures, in different places, locales, and there has not been much study about them because this comes under regional histories and local histories. So most of the scholars do not want to do these kind of studies. They want to do pan Indian and big studies which will give thrust to their PhD dissertation and thesis. But then the real value comes when you highlight a local cult or tradition which is continuing over the centuries. And this is very prominent in Mathura, which I have discussed in my papers also, in my dissertation also. So local cults give a different feel, and the traditions and rules and regulations of established religions do not adhere to local cults. So when you will study local cults, you will find very different kind of oral histories. You will find very different kind of meta narratives which local people or the priest or the people coming from different backgrounds will provide you. But they are not discussed or studied much because most of the professors or most of the scholars do not want to go in that domain.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. One of our audience members is asking if you could just provide your email ID in the chat box so
Yeah,
that if
it
there are
is.
any further questions.
Yeah, sure. And one person was asking about the Vadamanu. It is very much available with the ASI, the detailed excavations of Vadamanu in Andhra Pradesh, which were done in 1980s. You can write to me if anybody wants to get any help regarding their synopsis or dissertation or whatever work they are doing. I will be more happy if some research scholars um, get in contact and discuss, and I would be of any help related to Jainism or anything which I have studied. I'll be very much happy to help our young scholars.
Thank you very much, sir. I would now request for a formal vote of thanks. Prashant Goyal, who is the research fellow of Bhagwan Sheetalnath Chair for Jain Archaeology. I request him to kindly propose a formal vote of thanks for the wonderful lecture that sir has presented before us.
Thank you, Oshin. Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the Bhagwan Sheetalnath Chair for Jain Archaeology, Department of AISC and Archaeology, Deccan College Postgraduate and Research Institute, Pune, we are especially grateful to Dr. Yashvender Dhaka sir for delivering the 7th lecture of the Professor H.D. Sankalia monthly lecture series on Jain heritage. His talk on archaeology of the Jain Stupa at Mathura, epigraphy, engravers, and issue of patronage was highly informative and offered value insight into a complex and important subject. It was a pleasure to listen to such well-researched and thoughtful perspective. Special thanks to Dr. Narendra Parson sir, Dr. Pavan Jain madam, Dr. Manjari Bhalerao madam, Dr. Renuka Purwal madam, Dr. Manisha Purvanik madam, Sayali Palande Datar madam, Dr. Tamik Pawar sir for their presence. I would also like to thank the organizing team and my fellow members at the Bhagwan Chitalna Chair for Jain Archaeology for their effort in making this event possible. And finally, a heartfelt thank you to everyone who joined us this evening. Your interest and presence made this session truly meaningful. We looking forward to seeing you at the upcoming lecture. Good evening. Have a great
Thank
evening.
you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you all the audience. Jai
Thank
Jinay.
you, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.